Many thanks again. It's a great honor to receive this award, and I'm also especially pleased to receive this award this year while at this conference where the theme is the science and society, because in many ways my research is the science of society, in particular the evolutionary science of society. So I'm in the biology department at UPenn, and let's see. And I'm an evolutionary biologist, and unfortunately this is too bright for you to see all of the detail, but this is the tree of life. This is the sort of the common representation of the notion that all living organisms are descendant by modification from a common ancestor, as far as we know. And you can see all the branches. I mean, the branches are yellow, so you can see them very well, but there are all branches connecting every single organism that is living today, frogs, butterflies, fungi, to a common ancestor. And this is what evolutionary biologists study. This is what we study as evolutionary biologists. But I don't study actually the diversity of forms and the diversity, the systematics of this, but I study the diversity of interactions between organisms. And so here's my picture of the diversity of life. And here, I just pulled a bunch of pictures from the internet and then put them on this tree of life, which I also pulled up from the internet, to make the point that at all levels of biological organization, no organism lives by itself. Okay, so this goes from biofilm formation in bacteria, which is tremendously important actually for both the evolution of bacteria, but also for disease-causing organisms, for example. A lot of infections rely on biofilm formation to actually become virulent. To interactions between soil microbes and plants. This little plant is the member of a family called legumes, so same family as soybeans or peas, and legumes are very important for Earth's ecosystems and obviously for agriculture because they form a symbiosis with bacteria from the soil called rhizobia, where the rhizobia provide nitrogen provide a nitrogen source for the legumes in exchange for carbon, and it's a mutually beneficial interaction. This is a slide. This is a microscope picture of sort of primitively multicellular algae called wallbucks, and this is sort of one of the cases where multicellular life is emerging before our eyes. There are many species in wallbucks that are unicellular, single-cell organisms, and there are many other species that are sort of forming some sort of colony. And all the way through the tree of life, you see interactions like that, up to ants that live on a tree, on an acacia tree, and defend the acacia tree against herbivores, to social insects, to birds that breed cooperatively. This is the superb fairy wren from Australia, not to be confused with the regular fairy wren. To chimpanzees that patrol their territory together, and they have this is a territory patrol. They will just go around the borders of their territory and basically try to chase off any intruder, and other primates. So the point of all these interactions is they are at some level, all of them are social, and many of them are cooperative, meaning that the different organisms provide some benefit to each other. They work together and they provide some benefit to each other, and they rely on those benefits. And the central sort of theme of my research program is that these cooperative interactions make life as we know it. So if you think about evolution, you usually think, nature read in tooth and claw, that there's competition, there's predation, everybody's trying to get ahead, sort of a zero-sum game. And but in fact, natural selection doesn't act like that all the time. And in fact, the life as we know it wouldn't exist except for cooperation between species. For example, multicellularity is a good example. And of course, we know, since this young dude, that natural selection shapes all of life, and therefore natural selection shapes cooperation. By the way, I'm contractually obligated to show you a slide of Darwin because I'm an evolutionary biologist. It's in my contract. Okay, but cooperation doesn't come free in some sense. The cooperation comes with a sort of a dilemma or a tension attached to it. In many cases, sort of generically, and the economists in the audience will appreciate this, there are cases where when two individuals are interacting, there are usually outcomes that are better, that make both individuals better off than alternatives. So there's usually common interest to go to those outcomes, but there's almost always some conflict over provided that you are cooperating, how do you divide those benefits with each other? Okay, and this sort of tension between cooperation and conflict is a very common theme, and this is sort of what drives a lot of my research. Okay, so here's sort of my sort of cartoonish map of my research field, which I call social evolution theory. And so I sort of tend to think about 4 components to social evolution theory. One is sort of the game, what I would call a game, in the game theory sense. This is sort of a description of an interaction, different outcomes, different strategies individuals can play, and different outcomes. And proxy mechanisms, how individuals perceive the game and how they make decisions. In evolution biology, we are very concerned about demography and life cycle. And then we are also concerned about how the interaction structure is, how the interactions are structured. And so I was going to tell you a little bit about this interaction structure in a minute. And so this is sort of social networks. This is kind of Facebook for animals that are collected from the wild for birds, fishes, and ants. So they vary from species to species, but they vary also across time. And what my research recently has been trying to understand is what is the processes, what are the processes that cause this variation and cause the structure of social networks. And basically, what we're postulating right now is that there's this process called social inheritance where basically newborns inherit their connections. They connect to their parents' connections with some high probability. And that's sort of giving you a lot of, a very good fit to social networks in the wild, which I don't have a lot of time to, but this is the degree distribution, something that most network scientists look at. And this is the clustering distribution. And it also gives you sort of this appearance of genetic inheritance because you're inheriting your connections from your parents, but not genetically. And also makes individuals interact with other individuals of the same type. So makes individuals sort of interact with individuals that are like them. So therefore, social inheritance process can be a major force that is structuring the social networks, as our research shows. And therefore, it will also have a lot of effect on how individuals behave and what games individuals play and how their demography is shaped. Okay. So with that, I'd like to thank my funding sources, my lab, which is composed by my previous co-authors. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention, since this is about science and society, that what's going on in Turkey right now with our colleagues in Turkey that are being persecuted for expressing their opinions. And I dedicate this award to them. As you can see, the numbers are not very good.